This anime begins with a big war between humans and the Demon King's army, led by a guy named Leonis Death Magnus. After defeating the demons, our heroes focus on destroying the Demon King's castle. When Leonis hears this, he gets angry but decides to give up and be reborn, because he made a promise to the rebel goddess, Riselia Ishtaris. 1,000 years later, some students from a military academy are exploring an old ruin. Two girls named Riselia Ray Crystalia and Regina Mercedes are given a mission to check out a place where creatures called the Void, who are the enemies of humanity, might be hiding. They reach the center of the ruins and find a door with ancient writing on it. At that time, Riselia tries to read the writing while Regina looks around. But when Riselia touches the door, it suddenly opens, and she enters a room where she finds a human child trapped inside a crystal. In the past, Leonis made a promise to Riselia that he would find a human to carry divine power. To fulfill this promise, he sealed himself away for 1,000 years. Fast forward to the present. Riselia managed to break a crystal that held Leonis inside. He initially wanted to attack her, but realized he had turned into a 10-year-old child. He stayed quiet when Riselia hugged him out of pity. Riselia explained that Leonis had been imprisoned by the Void, and he had memory loss because of it. Meanwhile, Regina was facing a big Void creature, and Riselia had to prepare for the appearance of the Void in the room. Leonis also wanted to defeat the Void but tripped on his oversized cloak. Soon after, Regina came to his aid, and Riselia shielded him but got hit by a Void attack. Leonis used his magic to defeat the Void and save Riselia. When she woke up, she suspected that Leonis possessed the power of a holy sword, a rare ability in their world. Knowing about Leonis' extraordinary strength, Riselia and Regina decided to enroll him in the military academy. 6 years ago, the Void attacked the third fortress, causing many victims and severe damage to the city. At that time, Riselia lost her family in that incident, and only had Regina as her childhood friend and personal maid. Since then, Riselia had been trying to awaken the power of the Holy Sword. In the present, Riselia brings Leonis to the final fortress, which is both a place to live and a defense against the Voids. When they arrive at the military academy, Riselia tells Leonis to go into the examination room, where he'll have to take a test. She will handle the registration process, and Regina plans to do some shopping. As they go their separate ways, Leonis wonders why he has to become a student at the military academy. His original goal was to gather an army of demons and fight against humans. He summons his subordinates, Sherry Shadow Assassin and Blackest Shadow Prince, and tells them to gather information about the fortress. Soon after, Leonis enters the examination room, and Riselia, who just arrived, quickly gets her temporary ID card to complete the entrance exam paperwork. Afterward, she gives him a tour of the academy. When they enter the women's dormitory area, a student named Musel Rhodes approaches Riselia. Musel insists that Riselia should leave her group and join his team, which now has 4 members, including a girl who seems controlled by Musel's influence. Knowing all of this, Riselia refused Musel's demand to join his team. However, Musel kept pushing the idea until Leonis stared at him, causing Musel to back down and even fall to his knees. At that moment, Musel attempted to fight back, but a senior student named Elfine Fillet intervened to stop the situation. Elfine was introduced by Riselia as an information analyst on her team, who had not been part of the exploration that day because she was busy with data analysis. In the afternoon, Riselia and Leonis arrived at the women's dormitory, where Riselia was allowed to stay because she was still a child. She didn't hesitate to take a shower with Leonis until an unexpected event occurred. Riselia lost control of her body and unintentionally sucked Leonis' blood. After Riselia recovered in her room, Leonis explained that she had died during a Void attack, and he had used magic to resurrect her as one of his subordinates, making her a high-class vampire. Upon learning this, Riselia shared the tragic story of her family, who were holy sword knights and had died in a Void attack. She expressed her hope to develop abilities like her parents, even though she hadn't awakened those powers yet. There, Leonis assured Riselia that becoming a vampire had made her stronger. A little while later, Riselia and Leonis headed to the cafeteria. When Leonis tried to pay for his meal with gold coins, Riselia informed him that the academy cafeteria only accepted credit card payments. During their meal, they spotted Sakuya Sieglund, a member of Riselia's team who had a hobby of gambling and was being chased by debt collectors. Leonis also noticed that Sakuya was skilled with the sword, as she managed to scare away the debt collectors using her sword. On another occasion, Leonis took a holy sword exam, which was evaluated by de Grasse Alto. Although he initially claimed to have support-type abilities, his attack unexpectedly destroyed the simulation machine. Musil, who witnessed this, volunteered to test Leonis' abilities, and Leonis accepted the challenge without hesitation. At that time, Riselia stood as Leonis' guardian during the fight, as she saw that Musil would attack with her team. When the battle began, Riselia used her sword skills and vampire powers, which allowed her to awaken her holy sword's power and defeat Musil. To celebrate Riselia's success and Leonis joining the team, all the team members held a party in their dormitory. After the party ended, Elfine checked something to complete Leonis' registration data. While he was alone, Leonis called his subordinates, who reported that they had found a massive crystal under the floating island. Strangely, Sherry mentioned that they hadn't come across anyone who knew about the Demon King or the war from 1,000 years ago. Before becoming undead, Leonis was a hero who helped ordinary people, including miners, and fought against the Demon King. However, one day the person who paid Leonis turned against him and cruelly executed him because the king was jealous of the people's trust in Leonis more than the kingdom itself. After this terrible event, Riselia became involved with Leonis. Back in the present, Leonis woke up from his sleep and was surprised to find a bite mark on his neck. He learned that Riselia had bitten him and reminded her to ask for permission before doing so. Riselia agreed and asked Leonis to teach her self-defense skills. Meanwhile, the leaders were having a strategic meeting to discuss how to deal with threats in the water area. As Riselia practiced her sword skills, Leonis explained that he couldn't teach her magic just yet. He set up a group of skeleton warriors for her to defeat as part of her initial training. After successfully defeating the skeleton army, Riselia admitted that she felt stronger than before. In the dormitory, Sakuya appears to have just returned from gambling, while Regina is busy making snacks. On the other hand, Leonis, accompanied by Riselia, goes to a snack shop where Sherry works. When Sherry realizes her master is visiting, she quickly hides to avoid being seen by Leonis. After buying donuts, Leonis and Riselia head to a shelter for abandoned children to share the donuts they purchased. The children are delighted to see Riselia, and they all enjoy the donuts together. Now, let's go back to the past. Leonis, along with two other heroes named Ericol de Gradios and Therese Resurrection, is working together to defeat monsters that have invaded. During this time, Ericol plans to attack the monsters and the residents all at once, with the intention of resurrecting the affected residents afterward. Although they could carry out this plan, Leonis considers it inhumane and opposes it. Instead, he chooses to fight the monsters on his own. This decision earns Leonis praise from many people but causes Ericol to hold a grudge against him. Returning to the present, Elfine reports the results of her analysis to the higher-ups about the movement of the void under the floating island. This movement has damaged the communications network due to electromagnetic interference. Shortly after the report, the guards spot a void that looks like plant roots, making them prepare for a battle. Meanwhile, Leonis and Riselia were still at the children's shelter. The kids were excited to learn that Leonis was a holy sword knight and asked him to show them his holy sword. However, underground, the security forces were struggling to contain the void's attack. These creatures were causing havoc by destroying the city's energy sources. Soon after, voids appeared in the sky, and security forces activated their weapons to try to stop the voids from spreading further into the city. Back with Riselia, as she and Leonis were about to evacuate the children, voids appeared around the shelter. She told the children to hide while she and Leonis would fight off the attacking voids. At that time, Riselia used her holy sword to defeat the voids that came, but their numbers were too many for Leonis to handle with his magic. Meanwhile, a powerful void-class Hydra appeared in the city and destroyed the air defense system. Seeing the increasing threat, Leonis asked Riselia to protect him while he prepared to use a large-scale magic spell. Now, let's go back to the past. Leonis, who was once the immortal king, presented war prizes to Riselia to celebrate his victory. During this time, Riselia had a holy sword that Leonis had used when he was a hero. However, because he was no longer a hero, Riselia transformed the sword into a demon sword as a gift. Right now, all the voids seemed to be defeated by Leonis, but then, plant roots suddenly appeared and grabbed Riselia. Leonis realized that these plant roots were controlled by his arch-enemy, Ericol, who had led the voids to attack the city. It seemed like Ericol had kidnapped Riselia on purpose to lure Leonis underground. Even though Leonis knew it was a trap, he decided to go along with it and defeat Ericol. Meanwhile, the rest of their team was dealing with a monster called the Void Hydra. Leonis got in touch with Elfine to find out where Riselia was taken by Ericol. Once he had the information, Leonis hurried to confront Ericol using his fire magic. Unfortunately, Ericol had some tricky abilities. He could heal quickly and absorb magic, which made it tough for Leonis. At the same time, Riselia was trying to break free from Ericol's plant roots. There, Leonis realized this and gave her a bit of his blood, which awakened her vampire powers. Soon after, Riselia got stronger and managed to cut the plant roots that were holding her, helping Leonis face Ericol. During that time, Leonis decided to awaken a powerful demon sword. To do this, he had to prove his commitment by confessing that the land they were on was his kingdom, and that he had to protect all the people living there. It seemed like the demon sword recognized his sincerity because he was able to wield its power and defeat Ericol with just one strike. After Ericol was defeated, all the voids that had been causing trouble in the city disappeared one by one. When Riselia and Leonis returned to their dormitory, she needed to recharge her magic energy, so she asked him for a bit of his blood. To help her, he offered his finger for her to bite. Unfortunately, right at that moment, their team members walked into the room, making it tricky for Riselia to explain what was happening between her and Leonis. Sometime later, they began repairing the damage the voids had caused to the city. Leonis, who had declared this area as his kingdom, wanted to learn more about the city's history. He tried to access the archive room, but he needed permission from the administration center. Luckily, Regina came to his rescue, and he was granted access to read some of the stored records. Just as they were about to read an ancient book, they received an invitation to a party hosted by Princess Alteria Ray Oltrees. After Leonis, Regina, and their friends received the invitation to Princess Alteria's party, Leonis asked Regina to go ahead and join the party, saying he would follow after finishing his business in the archives room. However, Regina surprised him by saying she wouldn't attend the party and walked away. Meanwhile, a radical group made up of half-human creatures was plotting to kidnap Princess Alteria in exchange for gaining the power of a demon sword. Knowing that the party would take place on a cruise ship, Leonis went to the port and bought a keychain, which he gave to Riselia as a gift. She was happy and mentioned a myth that if a boy gives a gift to a girl, he would become a demon king at night when he grows up. As the cruise ship arrived at the dock, the rebels attacked the guards and stole their identities to carry out their plan. Soon after, guests started arriving for the party, and Leonis relaxed on the ship while reading notes about his own history, which had been manipulated to not match the actual events. At that time, Sherry, dressed as a ship's servant, approached Leonis, and he asked her to gather information about the ship in exchange for a gift to make her more enthusiastic about her duties. Unexpectedly, Riselia and their friends approached Leonis, who was alone, and invited him to go swimming. At first, he declined, but after Riselia insisted, he agreed to join her. Meanwhile, Regina kept a close watch on Princess Alteria through binoculars to ensure her safety. As night fell, the intruders managed to capture Princess Alteria and took everyone at the party hostage, including the Holy Sword Knights. Besides that, the radical group had taken control of the ship's control room, which would help them escape once their mission was accomplished. Regina, who knew Princess Alteria was in danger, quickly boarded the ship to rescue her younger sister. She also met Leonis, who had not been captured, and they decided to work together on a rescue plan. In the past, there was a royal myth that stated any royal descendants born under a shining star were considered unwanted and abandoned. This unfortunate fate befell Regina, who was secretly raised by the Crystalia family and grew up alongside Riselia as her sister. Over time, Regina became Riselia's personal maid. On the ship, Regina, being a descendant of the royal family, possessed spirit powers that allowed her to communicate. She used this ability to contact Alteria, even though it could potentially reveal her true identity. However, Regina was willing to take the risk to save her younger sister. After a successful communication, Regina learned that Alteria was being taken to the flight deck. There, Leonis decided to join the rescue mission for Alteria, while Regina planned to go downstairs to take control of the ship. Meanwhile, inside the party hall, Riselia and her friends came up with a plan to rescue the hostages. While Sakia and Fenris Edelritz created a distraction, Riselia used her vampire blood to disable the enemy's demonic weapons. Even though they defeated all the bad guys, the situation wasn't safe, because the ship was heading towards the Void's nest, and some Voids started attacking the ship. Leonis then ordered Riselia to protect Regina, who was taking control of the ship. Eventually, the ship moved away from the Void's nest, and Leonis stopped the plane carrying Alteria, declaring himself a demon king who would punish the kidnappers. When Leonis saw one of the kidnappers, Sharnak, an elf, she wanted to ask about a goddess. But before Sharnak could say anything, she was killed by a sword of destruction that turned into a void. In history, this sword of destruction had been given by the gods to heroes who protected humanity. Soon after, more voids arrived to attack Leonis, but luckily, Regina took control of the ship and used the defense system and guided missiles to fight off the voids. At the same time, Riselia fought the remaining voids to buy time for Leonis to cast his magic and eliminate all the voids. After the incident, Alteria thanked the students from the military academy for their help in defeating the kidnappers and the voids. Strangely, Leonis and Regina didn't participate in the princess's award ceremony and were seen alone in a room. Some time later, the half-human rebels were gathered up and arrested by the authorities. However, Leonis, wearing a mask, appeared and used his powers to help all the soldiers. He then offered the rebels a safe haven if they were willing to become his subordinates, and they agreed to follow his orders. Then, when Leonis returned to the dormitory, Riselia and Regina were curious about his sudden return. He was being lied and said he had gone for practice to prepare for a sparring match later. Turns out, they decided to come up with a strategy to defeat Fenris's team in the upcoming sparring match. When the sparring practice began, Riselia and Fenris's teams entered the arena, and as planned, Riselia and Leonis managed to capture the first flag. Meanwhile, Elfine analyzed the situation, and Regina attacked the opposing team from a distance. During her battle with Fenris, who had the power of a frozen dog, Riselia felt overwhelmed and couldn't move due to the attack. With low determination, Riselia tried to break free from Fenris's holy sword attack, until she finally managed to escape and launched a counterattack that cornered Fenris. Finally, Riselia's team emerged victorious in that battle. After their win, the team members relaxed in the hot springs, and even Riselia found time to help Leonis wash his hair. Sometime later, the third fortress, which had been gone for a long time, suddenly reappeared and headed toward the seventh fortress. At that time, an emergency signal was detected on the island. Then, Degrius assigned the entire Riselia team the mission to check the island and search for survivors. They quickly flew to the location of the third fortress. On the way, Leonis fell asleep with his head in Regina's lap and dreamed about the past when Riselia had mentioned disappearing and reappearing in the future, 1,000 years later. When they arrived at their destination, Riselia and Leonis were assigned to check the city center, while Regina and the others looked for a place to send an emergency signal. Meanwhile, Arl Curlisio, a hero from the past, suddenly appeared on the island and mentioned that a goddess from ancient times was about to awaken, so Arl was tasked with stopping her. Soon after, a man named Nephekis approached Arl, declaring his intention to prevent her from interfering with the goddess's awakening. On the other hand, Leonis and Riselia had to face a powerful giant void creature. There, Leonis used his fire and lightning magic in succession to try to eliminate the void, while Riselia was moved to a safe place. After defeating the void, Leonis helped Riselia, who had injured her leg. Thankfully, the spirits of the soldiers who had died in the third fortress provided them with a vehicle. In the car, Riselia needed to drink some of Leonis' blood to regain her strength. Meanwhile, Regina and the others encountered Arl and were forced to fight the elf because Arl believed they were part of Nephekis' group. During the battle, Sakuya asked Arl to stop attacking and offered to help the injured elf, who had been hurt by a previous void attack. After Arl was treated, Elfine reported their team's condition to Riselia, who asked all team members to gather at her old residence to discuss their next steps. Then, after a phone call, Leonis gave a special red dress to Riselia. This dress could turn vampire energy into strength for the body. He also gave her some keychains as an extra gift. Then Riselia asked her friend Elfine why another Arl had come to the island. Arl explained that her mission was to defeat a rising goddess. Later, when Leonis and Riselia got to Riselia's damaged home, she felt sad because it reminded her of her childhood. When Riselia went upstairs, she met Nephekis, who she thought was a survivor. Suddenly, Nephekis attacked her, but a keychain from Leonis protected her, and she passed out but survived. Nephekis tried to attack her again, but Leonis stopped him. It surprised both of them because Nephekis was a person trusted by the underworld demon, and they didn't expect Leonis, who was just a child, to be able to defend against the attacks. Not long after that, Nephekis started doing rituals to bring the goddess back to life by using Tyrese' body. Leonis didn't quite understand what was happening, but he felt like it was connected to his past. So he and his team quickly moved away from the building where the goddess was rising and started fighting off the approaching voids. Turns out, Tyrese had the power to bring things back to life, so they focused on attacking the head of the voids, which was their weak spot. When a powerful Void Lord came closer, Leonis used his strongest magic, but it didn't work well because the Void Lord could heal fast. The Void Lord even smiled and launched more attacks. At that moment, Leonis asked Riselia to protect him as he tried to use his demon sword against the Void Lord, but strangely, the sword wouldn't work. He also heard Riselia's voice coming from inside the Void Lord, which made him lose his determination and accept the Void Lord's attack. Seeing this, Riselia, who was wearing a vampire queen dress, had to take over and fight the Void Lord. Meanwhile, while Leonis was unconscious, he remembered a request from Riselia before he was sealed. She had asked him to use a demon sword to kill her if he ever woke up in a different form. Shortly after Leonis woke up, the spirits on the island offered their souls to help him face the Void Lord. Soon after, Leonis decided to accept help from the souls of the victims he had collected, using their energy to power up his demon sword. He also turned some soldiers into undead to join the battle against the voids, the enemy creatures. Meanwhile, the powerful Void Lord was getting ready to launch a devastating attack that could burn everything nearby. Leonis needed some time to prepare his own magic attack. On the other hand, Riselia and her skeleton army continued fighting to give Leonis the time he needed to get ready. Meanwhile, Elfine and her friends were speeding on motorcycles to catch up with their comrades who were fighting the enemy. Just as the Void Lord set up a protective shield, Arl arrived at the scene and quickly destroyed the shield with her holy sword. This gave Leonis the opportunity to use his magic, which finally defeated the Void Lord. In the end, the anime showed Riselia and her team gathering and waiting for a rescue plane to arrive. On the plane, Riselia had a fairy tale book about a demon king, and after reading it, she jokingly said that Leonis was somewhat similar to the demon king in the story. However, Leonis didn't agree with her. The anime ends. The moral lesson from this anime is never underestimate the power of a donut. It brought together heroes, stopped a rebellion, and even saved a princess. Donuts can truly change the world.